I have made a detailed submission, and Chairman, as you may note, Jeff has also endorsed my submission, which is all copied to you and the DG. I will limit my submission to a very specific aspect, mainly the CEB letters dated 4th September and 29th September, which justified the tariff increase. Now, as Vidura, Arjun, and a lot of people pointed out, based on the letters of CEB, they expected a generation of 16,706 gigawatt hours. Based on the information, updated information on the 29th of September, based on today's submission, CEB expects a generation of between 15.4 and 15.7 gigawatt hours. My own calculations indicated 15.6 gigawatt hours for the year 2023. The significance of this is very simple. Because of the increase in fuel generation, CEB estimated that they make 626 gigawatt hours of increased generation at a cost of 28 billion rupees. Based on today's admission by CEB, they can save 505 gigawatt hours at a minimum. The impact of this is 22 billion rupees. If you look at CEB's financial statements, I believe, have other income of 10 billion. I stand to be corrected, and in fact, I welcome CEB to challenge whatever I have said. Unlike, I know the Commission said they don't want people cross-questioning people, but I actually welcome CEB to state if my information is incorrect, if I'm making an incorrect statement, please go ahead and challenge me. If you actually have a savings of 22 billion, plus other income of 10 billion, that is 32 billion, which is equivalent to the loss of CEB. So while I've made a detailed submission, based on the PUCSL Act, I don't believe a further tariff increase for the current 3 months is justified. However, let's look at this from a long-term perspective. We do know that in the first 6 months of next year, there will be, reduced inflows from hydro. Now, the question is, are we even ready for those reduced inflows? It's all easy for us to say, let's go hydro, let's go solar. CEB cannot implement a project in 2-3 months. You can't order power equipment. You cannot implement projects in 2-3 months. Now, CEB, as a backup of Kalanidhisa, has, in my understanding, gone to cabinet and requested an expedition. They have actually chosen a vendor for Kalanidhisa replacement power plant. And they have said, can we go ahead with it? Because the vendor is giving financing at 4%, is not requesting government guarantees, and the vendor is willing to implement the power plant by at least February next year. My understanding is the Secretary of the Ministry is in the process of cancelling this tender. Now the question I would like to ask CEB is this correct? Because if that tender is cancelled, it'll take CEB another 4 years to float another tender and come with a cabinet decision. All that we'll do is to make CEB dependent on IPP, independent power producers. They need to generate electricity. If they don't have the hydro resources, if they don't have the resources, then they have to get it from somewhere. And then what's going to happen is in 4 or 5 months' time, we'll be back here blaming CEB, saying, what did you do? Now, that is a decision. If the ministry secretary makes a decision to cancel that tender, with all due respect to everyone here, that is not the fault of the CEB engineers or the management. Now, the PUCSL, as Dr. Arjun Pereira and everyone mentioned, has enough and more powers under the Act to actually look at things like this. In my submission, I actually quoted the sections in the Act and I asked a specific question from the PUCSL. will you find whether this tender is going to be cancelled? If the tender is going to be cancelled and CEB and the Cabinet of Sri Lanka has a backup plan, absolutely no issue. But if there is no backup plan, what is the PUCSL going to do? And Chairman, the other issue I'd like to bring out is, in my submission, when we came up with the PUCSL Act, I helped draft it. Section 18 of the Act is what the PUCSL should be using to have both public inquiries. The reason we gave you Section 18 is because it actually insulates the Commission from threats of the public. It insulates the Commission from actually wasting time, because a Commission's actions under Section 18 cannot be challenged under fact, can only be challenged under law for incorrect procedure. And for God's sakes, why is a Commission using Section 17B, okay, of the Act specifies actions by PUCSL for submissions made under the PUCSL Act? CEB's request is under the Sri Lanka Electricity Act 30.4. 30.4, and if you look at 30.3, the procedures to be followed for inquiries under that act, under emergency procedures, have been gazetted by PUCSL in 2016. I would actually say that this inquiry that is done here is actually incorrect, because CEB doesn't even follow the decision of the PUCSL. CEB can just go to courts and say, you know, PUCSL violated the act because they haven't followed the correct procedures. And they can say, all we have to do is show that there's an issue, and the CEB and the PUCSL is deemed to accept it. They don't have to even wait for you. That is precisely why I requested a Section 18 inquiry. And that is exactly why when Rohan Samarajiva went and drafted this act, he gave you that power under Section 18. Who is advising the Commission on these issues? Anyway, as a closing submission, Chairman, what is obvious is this. There is a great need to relook at the operations of Sri Lanka and what happens in Sri Lanka, including the CEB. However, CEB's input costs, okay? CEB's input cost is dependent on other entities. Lanka Coal. If Lanka Coal Company buys coal at a price which is above market prices, there's nothing CEB can do about it. There's nothing CEB can do about things like the electricity, the fuel costs. The only way to really do this is for the PUCSL to take regulatory action, start benchmarking costs, come up with levelized costs for each of the section of the power generation systems. Agree with CEB on what the power generation mix is going to be for the year. And if mixers change, then change tariffs. And let CEB, for God's sakes, make decisions going forward on a basis of technical expertise without worrying about what environmentalists say, what the cabinet says, or what anyone else says. For God's sakes, let CEB engineers actually have the power to go ahead and make the correct decisions. Because as a person who restructured Sri Lanka Telecom and took SLT onto an IPO, I can tell you one thing. We did it because the management of Sri Lankan Telecom said, no way, we will tell the directors and we will tell the government what we have to do. We're not going to wait for the government or the directors to tell us. In fact, we challenged the Telecom Regulatory Commission of Sri Lanka, and despite what was in our act, we went and bought Mobitel. And that was the only way SLT survived. Let the engineers and the management either trust the engineers and management to do what is right or sack them. Do not try and micromanage an organization. With all due respect, very few people have the technical expertise in this country to manage. Thank you.